thought I was actually on the bank of the Zamora. I was like, okay, it looks like a decent level, maybe even a little low. It's not too high, but there's a good amount of water in here. The light comes up, and I'm like, all right, it's like finally getting light out enough where I can get in my boat. I know this is gonna be a long couple of days. I should get going right away. Um, and yeah, make it 100 yards downstream. The fog starts to clear, and I realize that I'm on the tributary, not even the real river. And it's just ripping, man. It is, brown. There's trees going down the river. There's trash going down.
All right, you've done it again. You've tuned in to another episode of Tales from the Crips. Unlike my guest today, I haven't made it rich selling kayaking onesies, so I rely on the goodwill of my sponsors to help me pay the costs of the show. One of today's sponsors is a cornerstone of the paddle sports retail industry in Colorado and beyond, Four Corners Riversports. Four Corners Riversports is located in Durango, Colorado. They're a full-service paddle sports retail and rental store. If you're looking to get on the water, look no further than Four Corners Riversports. Call them at 970-259-3893 or visit their website at www.riversports.com. This episode is also sponsored by Taylor Barker with the group Real Estate Steamboat. I've known and paddled with Taylor for years, and he brings passion to everything he does. Steamboat Springs is a wonderful town with the Yampa River running right through it and has a vibrant and friendly boating community. If you're thinking of making a move to the Steamboat area or purchasing a vacation home, be sure to get in touch with Taylor. He's happy to give you a lay of the land, the real estate market, and to help find the perfect property for you. You can reach him at 336-314-4353 or by email at taylor@brokerintheboat.com. You can find those links in the show notes. This podcast is being featured on paddlinglife.com. Paddlinglife.com does a wonderful job of finding all the most interesting happenings in the world of paddling and bringing them straight to you in the form of news, interviews, articles, videos, and more. Check out paddlinglife.com. Okay, that's enough of that. Let's get jamming. Hello, and welcome to Tales from the Crips. While my guest today is someone that I don't know personally, I still have a story about the one time I met him many years ago, and I'll use that as a way of an introduction. So I just finished a run on the Big South Fork of the Poudre River, which is a classic Colorado Wilderness Class 5 run near Fort Collins. And the standard practice on this run is to take out roughly a mile before the road and hike out, because the last gorge is a continuous section that tends to get clogged with wood and kind of has a marginal Class 5 at the end of it. So I was waiting by the river with a couple of other people while shuttle was being run. And then all of a sudden we see two boaters pop out of the river right at the parking lot. And we are kind of surprised. We start talking to them. We explain to them that we're surprised to see them because most people get out upstream and ask them if they ran that last rapid curtain call. And they say, oh, we haven't done this run before, so we're just figuring it out. And they're like, is curtain call that weird one at the end? So they basically fired through this long Class 5 run on no beta that most people try to get a guide to help them down. And I'm pretty sure at the time they were still in high school. So I was like, not too surprised to see that like we're going to see a lot more out of them. Turns out it was these two brothers I'd heard of before, and they learned to kayak and climb when they were young, and they've been going around the state tearing it up and on the kayaking and climbing scene. So today I'm psyched to bring one of those brothers on the show. A number of years ago, he relocated from Colorado to the Columbia River Gorge, and he's upped his paddling game significantly since then. And while he may not be a big name for most people, he has some impressive accomplishments, including a sleeper top 10 finish in the North Fork Championship, beating out a lot of the big names in the sport at the time. And so we're going to find out much more today about what he's been up to. So Will Griffith, a.k.a. Griffith, a.k.a. Jamboy, welcome to the show.
Yeah, Kevin, stoked to be here with you. Yeah, that's a good story, man. It's so many memories paddling and outside of kayaking with my brother where we were just getting in over our heads, and that one I think just blends in with a bunch of others where I can't honestly remember that one time, but Yeah, my brother and some other friends in Colorado grew up kind of. We finally got our driver's licenses and were able to escape away from home and start getting into trouble. So a good friend along with my brother was is Will Grube. So the three of
Mm.
us and my brother and Will Grube, they used to do tons of marginal trips and missions. So that's a good story. I like that one. And yeah, there's many more to go along with that one.
Yeah, I've met Will Groove. He's also still tearing it up. Fantastic boater. Um, so I gotta start off because I don't even know. I've heard the nickname Jamboy many a time, but I don't know where it comes from. What's the story?
Yeah. Well, like you said, got some different aliases or names. Growing up, I always went by Griff, just short for my last name, Griff. So a lot of people, it's Griffith. And there's a turning point. Uh, Pretty much when I moved out here to the gorge, started getting called Jam. So when someone random comes up to me on the streets and says hi to me, depending what name they call me, I can kind of put a time frame on when my life met them. It's like I hear Griff, it's like, all right, it's before I was 18 or 19 years old. They say Jam, I'm like, all right, that's probably from after I moved here to the gorge. So just like a lot of nicknames people get, a couple friends that I moved out here with, we all got a place together. This guy Eric Johnson, another good buddy Sam Freihofer. The three of us found a place to live, and we're going to sign the lease. And she's writing down our names. She's like, "All right, you're Eric, you're Sam, and what's your name again?" And before I had a chance to jump in and tell her my name's Will Griffith, they're like, "That's Jam, that's Jam Boy." So, and I didn't know anyone in town, so as we're meeting other paddlers, they're just introducing me to everyone as Jam, and from there it stuck. And like, who's Griff? Who's Will Griffith? And like, Jam. Oh, you're Jam Boy. Yeah, it's a name that I
That's
don't think
awesome.
I'll be able to get rid of, and it's there to stay.
There's a lot worse nicknames you could get. That one works pretty well, I think.
Yeah,
So I think it's always fun to kind of go with start out with the origin story. So kind of like, how did you start out? What was your first introduction to kayaking? What was it like for you? How did you react to it?
yeah. I mean, since I was in water wings, I think I've been in a kayak.
Wow.
I've got memory, but it's probably one of those memories I've just fabricated off of a picture I seen because my dad got me this picture of me sitting in a squirt boat. Maybe it was a slalom boat, just a sparkly old school fiberglass boat in a front of his pool. So yeah, I've come up with this idea of that was my first time in a boat is sitting in this pool. But since then, after that, it was a lot of family float trips. We'd take Topo Duo out and canoe out. My family sometimes get another family on board and do this overnighter in Colorado called Ruby Horse Thief.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, on the Colorado River, and uh, it was sweet. We were real young, so we were able to be in the Topo Duo and get comfortable in the water. And then as we got older and continued to paddle that stretch and other stretches, my dad would throw both me, my brother, I got an older sister, he'd throw us in kayaks without a spray skirt. So if we flipped over, we just fall right out. And then this company, I think they still make gear. Maybe they're out of it now, but Wildwasser, they
Mm-hmm.
have some nylon spray skirts. So it's really easy for a kid to pull right off because even bungee skirts at that time were too hard to get on. And my little
Yeah.
arms back then, they're still small, but back then they're even smaller. They weren't strong enough to pull the bungee skirt off. So that was it, just floating down class two. Maybe there's like a minimal, maybe you could call it an eddy line, and my dad would teach us how to lean upstream, come into the eddies, make ferries, and he was good about just making it a playground and making it fun. If we got tired of kayaking and we wanted to jump in and go swimming for the rest of the day, he'd say, "All right." It wasn't like you're doing this, stick with it. So I think that
Yeah.
helped me a lot to not get burnt out on the sport. And
Yeah. Just making it a game because your dad's a pretty legit kayaker too, right?
Yeah, he's getting old. Uh, he's gonna probably smack me for saying that one, but no, he's 64 now. I'm 32, so he's twice my
Okay.
age, and he's still getting after it, running a lot of big whitewater. Doesn't get into the waterfalls too much. Anything over 10 feet, he tries to avoid. He's got some big metal rods in his back from a skiing accident
Ooh,
when he was in his 20s. So he
wow.
tries to keep it to big volume whitewater, but wanted to spend more time with me on the river. He started dabbling more creek boating, and yeah, he still tears it up.
That's awesome. Yeah. Things to aspire to, right?
Yeah, and I mean, he got me into a bunch of other activities. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, my mom's probably the less adventurous one of the two when it comes to outdoors stuff. Uh, so my dad would help take me away on the weekends and get me into the mountains, go skiing, rock climbing, kayaking, and with all those, he's always yeah, just giving me the opportunity to push it, but not forcing it upon me. So early on, I enjoyed skiing a lot more, and then it
Hmm.
was probably in high school that I started to uh, enjoy the kayaking a lot more.
Hmm.
Yeah, when I was 12 years old, I learned how to roll a kayak. And back then, they didn't even have kids' boats. So, like, the smallest boat we could find was because Jackson kayaks hadn't come out yet. So, it was a
Oh, yeah.
Wavesport Evo. And I just throw as many pads as I could in it, maybe a little extra water. And yeah, learned how to roll it. So, I got the roll down, but still wasn't fired up on the sport and ready to go after and take it on as big passion until I got into my sophomore year of high school.
And then you started to get into it. And was your brother JP? He was also getting into it at the same time. Were you guys
Yeah,
kind of like
he's a year and a half younger than me,
okay?
and yeah, we got into it just about the same time. Um,
Did that
yeah.
help? Did that help? Kind of like have a little competition or something? Like, all right, if he's doing it, I better do it a little more.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, continual back and forth. It's like can't let the little brother beat you, and he always managed to find a way to top me. So
Nice. So when you, I mean, I guess when I became aware of you, I think it was your brother that was putting out some videos and stuff, and I kind of heard some people talking about these two high school kids that are out there firing it up. What was kind of like the most notable runs that you started getting on early on?
um, oh man, uh, Gore Canyon was a go-to for us. We grew up in Denver, Colorado, like 5-10 minute bike ride from downtown. So the Front Range paddling was the closest stuff for us. Uh, so we spent a lot of time on Clear Creek, uh, Black Rock section, and the Numbers section um, on Lower Clear Creek. But Gore Canyon, when we were able to get over to that was like the next level. And yeah, there's that race that they still put on, Gore Fest. And growing
Yeah.
up, before we were at that level to paddle Gore, my dad would go out there and do the races sometimes, and he'd come back with tales of getting beat down in Tunnel Falls or yeah, all the gossip from it. And that was always in the back of our minds, like, oh, we want to do that one day. And when we became old enough and strong enough to get on that section, that's where we were able to start pushing a little more.
So it must have Gore for you must have really culminated with the high water run that y'all did. I remember hearing from because Brian Bank, I used to paddle with him. It's hard to paddle Gore without paddling with Brian Bank back in the day, and he had this whole theory about like you could as long as you ran it in increments, like there was no limit to how high you could run it. You know, he's kind of like, well, if you can catch it, just 1,000 more, then all the lines, and you can just like run it. So it's like as long as you did it 1,000 increments. So his whole plan that year was like a big water year. Was he was going to like keep stepping it up in increments, and I think it was somewhere like 6,500 or so, right, or somewhere in the 6,000s, which is really high for Gore. That I think like you two and somebody else and Brian like ran Gore, which is like I don't know if you knew at the time, but that was really high for Gore, right? Like I remember like Stewksbury And Jesse Coombs had run it in the 4,000s and like wrote a big blog about how gnarly it was and everything.
Yeah, no, I remember seeing that blog when I was younger, and yeah, I don't remember the exact numbers on how high it was when we got that lap, but buddy Alex Dodge, who lives out
Oh
here in the
yeah.
Northwest, and still get to see him every now and then. He was there with us. Yeah, there was a handful of us, and Brian Bank joined on, and uh, it was one of those laps. I forget how my brother phrased it when he put out the video, because he's always been more into the media side of things than me. But it was highest complete descent of Gore Canyon. But no one in our group actually ran every rapid. I think between
No.
the whole group, every rapid got ran that day, but a few of us, yeah, took turns running things. Someone was like, "That one's not for me." Another person was like, "All right, I'm giving this one." And it's cool when you run at that level. It actually, some things start to clean up, some things start to blow out, and holes start to disappear. But then there's a few rapids that just join all into one. And instead of being three separate rapids, it turns into like a mile long or mile plus long stretch of whitewater. So.
A quick interjection. After the interview, I looked up the flow. For the record, it was approximately 8,500 CFS. Okay, back to the interview.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we've
the
had some
consequences.
awesome times in Gore Canyon. Before we got on the show today, you mentioned the climbing trip that my brother and I had done in there, and
Yeah.
that was his idea because he's a big climber. Yeah, putting up some routes, some climbing routes. So we turned it, instead of a 1 day run, we turned it into an overnighter, and yeah, camped out along the way. Had our boats full of trad racks and ropes, some beers, and everything. Yeah, I think we had some food, maybe some oatmeal, but at the time we were like, let's take some beer over food. And um, but yeah, I just set up camp and put up 3 or 4 different routes that day, and yeah, it opened up a new vision for me. And since then, I haven't done any more multi-day, multi-sport trips where it's climbing and kayaking together. But going forwards, I've got maybe a half dozen rivers that I really want to pursue that,
Hmm.
and yeah, bring the climbing gear along with the kayaking gear.
Yeah, I thought that was super cool because obviously there's a lot of crossover between kayakers and climbers, and I'm sure a million people have gone into Gore Canyon, looked up at those cliff walls, and been like, "Man, there's probably some good routes to be established there." But as far as I know, you two are the only ones that have ever done it. What was it like? Did you find some pretty good routes to do? I mean, obviously it's different beasts trying to establish a route versus doing some trad route, but
Yeah, we did get on some stuff. One of the routes I remember being real chossy, and we're just tumbling rocks down. The other person's trying to jump out of the way of some boulders and rocks, but we did get on some cleaner cracks, and it's awesome. For those of the listeners that haven't done Gore, there's a train track that parallels the river. So quite often you're on the river, and train comes ripping past you, makes it all loud. If you're out of your boat scouting something, it's a great opportunity to pull down your pants and moon all the passengers on the train. But it made the climbing really interesting because you couldn't hear the person below if they're yelling. If the person climbing's yelling take or slack, whatever the verbal beta is, it disappears with that train going by. So yeah, I just remember that now as an interesting aspect of it.
yeah, for sure. Um, what was I? What was I going to ask? Oh, so like in those days, did you ever find yourself getting in over your head? Did you have any of those experiences early on?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, it makes me think of some quote. I don't know where I heard this. I got a handful of quotes written down in journals on my phone, and I never write down where they came from, but I just know it didn't come from me. But this one's something like experience is often just a word for uh, doing something the wrong way and getting away with it. So yeah,
That's a good
growing
one.
up And even now, building a lot of experience day by day. And yeah, we got in over our heads. Yeah. Uh, I feel like once I moved out here to the Northwest, I really started taking my kayaking to another level. I had more days on the river, and that's a big reason I moved out here instead of just having a 3 or 4 month season when the snow's melting, like it is in Colorado.
Sure.
We have we have year round paddling out here, so more days on the river gave me more opportunities to push it and yeah, get in over my head.
Yeah, I feel like it's easier to get in over your head out there too when you have a lot of water potentially coming down the river. Do you have a notable one in mind where you're like, oh man, I gained some experience there?
Yeah, quite a few out here in the Northwest. I mean, yeah, lots of times it all ends well and it's a good story to laugh about and joke about, but at the same time, there's moments when it doesn't end well and worst case scenarios happen. So, not to bring down the good vibe, but that's something that happens out there is yeah, accidents, injuries, death. So yeah, there's been a number of times in the country and out of the country when I've gone in over my head and uh, yeah, one of them that I'm able to laugh about now is Summit Creek. It's about 45 minutes from White Salmon and a little micro creek, but really cool geology in the rock. Allows for some big waterfalls. There's a couple big drops in there. One of them's gets a lot of footage put out from it called Skate Park Falls. And
Hmm.
upstream of there, there's another little gorge. And the Wells brothers, I think it was both Wells brothers, maybe Eric Boomer, Evan Garcia, they'd gone in and gotten the first ascent a few years before. And I was out on a trip. It was before I moved to the gorge, a year before I moved out here. And Todd Wells is like, hey, let's go run that today. So we head over there, and it was a little lower than recommended flows, but we were young and still fired up, ready to send it. And couple people were smart enough at this one. It's probably 50 plus feet, rolls for like 30 feet, and then turns into 40 feet of vertical drop. And most of the guys in our group were smart enough to say, no, I'm portaging this right off the bat. Well, Todd wanted to run it. I wanted to run it. So for me, it was a little bit of being lazy, not wanting to portage. But Todd runs it first, goes over the handlebars a little bit, and it's so shallow. There's such little water that he ends up ejecting out of his kayak, and if I remember correctly, getting a black eye from the bottom of the river.
Whoa.
Uh, I don't see his line because I'm sitting in my boat up above. So our other buddy on the trip turns around, I'm hands up, like, how'd it go? And he gives me like not a thumbs up, not a thumbs down, just like a waving hand, but like, you could do it still. And kind of gives me the hand signal that Todd had gone over the bars. So I was like, okay, try not to go over the bars. Um, I ended up hitting a flake right when it goes vertical, flying out into the green water, not even being able to see the pool, just the rock across the pool, just looking at the other shore and just landing flat, busted my back, 4 vertebrae broke, and
Oh,
had to go
damn.
crawling and climbing out of there. So that's one moment around here, a local one here in the Northwest when I got in over my head, but back healed up
Yeah,
fine after a few months. No
that's good.
surgery was needed, just wore a turtle shell brace. And it's one of those times I was able to learn from and now laugh about.
Yeah. Were you able to walk out of there or was it an epic trying to get out of there?
It was a little bit of an epic. It's actually on res land, so I don't think
Oh.
we're supposed to be there. And I was pretty stubborn. I was telling myself, like, maybe it's just some broken ribs, maybe it's not a broken back. It's like, all right, let's get out of here. I had 2 friends, one under each arm, supporting me, and then another friend helping me from behind with my life jacket. And we're going up this scree slope. The friend helping me from behind slips on the scree, and instead of letting go of my life jacket and taking care of himself, he yanks down on me. And Yeah, that was pretty painful. So took about 30 minutes, 40 minutes to get up to the road. And then, yeah, we started drifting corners and hauling down to the hospital. And yeah, I mean, could have ended a lot worse, but it panned
Yeah,
out. And yeah, night or two in the hospital. And then, yeah, had a walker for a couple weeks. And after a few weeks, I was able to make my way around the block and slowly do the rehab. And after 3 or 4 months, I was back in the boat paddling.
man. Well, I'm glad that worked out okay. Like you
Yeah,
said, it's easy to look back on it when it ends up turning out reasonably okay, but sometimes things go the other way, right?
absolutely. Yep.
All right. Well, I'm gonna since we're on the subject of questionable behavior, I gotta I gotta ask you this because I heard, I've always been a fan of the Hammer Factor. They're not putting out much anymore, but I used to love listening to them when they were putting out regular episodes. And I remember at one point they were in somewhere at the beginning of the show. They were kind of like, should we talk about? There's some weird stuff going on in the gorge. Should we talk about this? And someone, I don't know, Grace or someone was like, no, I'm not. We're not even going to talk about it. Let's just move on. And I had no clue what they're talking about. I'm not plugged in enough to all the gossip. But then someone was paddling with somebody, and they were referring to it, and they're like, oh yeah, I know what it was about. Like, there's this guy Jamboy. He's in the gorge. He's like paddling like Little White and shit without wearing a helmet. And like, I guess I've heard arguments like, why, I guess I see where I think the Hammer Factor, like where they were coming from, was like, we don't even want to give this any attention. Like, this sounds like a cry for attention. Like, let's not do it. I understand that perspective, but I guess I have the advantage of not knowing you. I have no idea what's going on there. So I'm like genuinely curious about this. Like, my first reaction is, all right, sounds like bad idea. I like to wear my helmet even in class 3, but tell us the story. What's going on there?
Yeah. Yeah, I can see where they would avoid talking about it, not wanting to throw attention out there. Hopefully, it's that reason, not that they're scared to get into a controversial subject. Because I think the listeners like hearing some controversial stories. Gets
That's
people
right.
riled up, fired up. But
Here at Tales from the Crypts, we don't shy away from controversy.
yeah, full throttle. Um, I don't know, man. It's hard to put a specific start date on it, but I'd like to say, if I remember correctly, uh, some gear got forgotten one day. I think someone else maybe forgot a helmet on the truss. The truss is the section on the white salmon, the green truss. And I've done that section more than any other section of river in my life. Um,
But
so,
also a class 5. I mean, basically class
yeah,
5 creeking. Yeah.
yeah, I think in some guidebooks it's class 5, some levels maybe I'd consider it class 4. The 1 through 5
Yeah.
scale, and anyone who's been in whitewater for a little bit of time realizes pretty quickly that uh, it's interesting scale to have in our sport because uh, there's no room. The way it's set up now, there's no room to turn something into class 6 and have it runnable. It's class 6. My understanding is that's unrunnable. So things that were class 5, 30 years ago, should they still be considered class 5 when this next generation coming up, they're starting to run some crazy whitewater, harder than I'll ever run or ever plan on running, but it all seems to get compiled into this class 5 number. So,
Yeah. Totally
well,
agree with
yes,
you. Yeah.
a lot of people would consider the trust class 5, and I consider it class 5 at certain levels.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the levels that I typically do it at, I'd call it more hard class 4. Um, and the days when I'm out there without a helmet and life jacket, those are definitely the days when it's at a medium water level and not at a crazy high water level. But back to that first day when some gear got forgotten, the person that had forgotten their helmet hadn't done as many laps on the river as me. And instead of going to someone's house or back to our house and picking up all the gear, uh, I decided to hand off my helmet to them and do a lap without a helmet, and kind of just opened up my mind to the difference that it makes in my paddling mentally, and how I get tuned in a different way than when I have my helmet and life jacket on.
Hmm.
I just want to throw out there that I know it's not like a good role model thing to do, and there's little uh, kids that maybe look up to me as a paddler, as a role model, and sorry to their parents or people that care about them if I'm setting a bad example. But I think there's a lot worse things I could be doing in life, setting a lot worse examples. So, yeah, take what I do with a grain of salt. Anyone that's listening to this or watches me out there on the river, take my actions with a grain of salt and make your own choices. But uh, there's something to be learned from everyone. And then idols, man, like maybe I'm going off topic here, but idols, it's like, it's interesting. We have heroes, or I have heroes in my life, and I've had them previously. And it seems like as I meet them in person or start to learn more about them and who they really are, they become less of my idols and less heroes because I start to figure out their flaws
Hmm.
and defects, and no one's perfect. And yeah, when I was younger, I'd have all these yeah, heroes of mine. I want to be like that person. And as I grow up and start to get to know them better, it's like I actually want to be my own self. I don't necessarily want all the traits that they have.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah,
That,
the
that rem-
paddling without a helmet and life jacket that day just, like I was saying, opened up my mentality to pushing myself in a different way. I've been called out by a lot of people trying to do it for attention. Um, and that's not the case. You know, if I really want to do it for attention, I'd probably be slapping a GoPro on and putting up tons of footage online of it. So
yeah. I
I've
mean,
have a lot of close friends that I paddle with that told me, "Hey, I don't want to be on the river with you when you do that." So it's turned
hmm.
into a time now where if I do that, I try and respect that, and I just put on the river by myself. So
Hmm.
it turns into solo paddling without a helmet and a life jacket. Or
Extra
solo
safe.
paddling alone if people talk shit on and say that it's a bad idea. And yeah, throwing all those risks in there, is it really necessary? For me, it's not necessary. Nothing we do in life, or very few things in life, are necessary. Um, but allows me to push the sport in a different way. And I think a lot of the kayaking I do and other people do while wearing helmets, life jackets, and being with other people is more hazardous than my solo laps without a helmet and life jacket. And
Hmm.
I'm not doing these solo laps on sections of river that I don't know well. These are sections of river, the Little White Salmon and the Truss, uh, that I have done more than any other in my life. I can sit with my eyes closed and picture so many of the moves on them. Uh, so yeah, I like to think that it's not as dangerous as people make it out to be. Um, in some ways, I'm trying to take less risks when I am not wearing all that gear. Uh, when I have the gear on, uh, I'll start trying to catch weird eddies, or I get distracted and I'm thinking about other things outside of the river. And when I don't have that gear, I know I need to be present in the moment, fully tuned in and focused, because flipping over or making a mistake uh, can lead to an accident that much quicker.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah,
So what I hear you saying is the reason you I mean, you did it once out of convenience, but the reason you've done it again, and I guess continue to do it, is because it really creates a mindset that you can't experience and a focus that you can't experience otherwise.
yeah, and I think there's other activities in life that could bring me that focus. I've just been kayaking a long time. I know that's a easy one to go to, um, and yeah, it gives me that focus that is hard for me to find uh, in my kayak with a helmet and a life jacket on, unless I'm paddling some true class 5. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I still do push it in my kayak with a helmet and life jacket on, um, but
Yeah,
yeah,
but these are your daily runs that you know well, and it's a way. It's I guess
yeah,
you could say it's a way to mix it up to be able to do those daily runs in a with a different mindset, a different focus.
yeah, and like two wrongs don't make a right. So just because some other people are out on the river doing some crazy stuff, uh, doesn't mean it's right or justifies uh, me kayaking without a helmet and life jacket. But I think it's a little bit of a comparison there. And the solo paddling, I mean, I think there's a lot to be said about the safety of paddling alone. A lot of people would be going, wait, how does that work? You don't have anyone setting safety for you. Uh, well, safety can be pretty marginal. And a lot of times we get a false sense of security having someone else on the river with us or having that gear on. Having other people on the river, like a lot of other sports, skiing, mountaineering, you can get into a group mentality that can be pretty dangerous. Uh, I've witnessed it myself on the river being with people where we don't say anything. We're rolling in towards a rapid, and you look over at someone and they look back at you, and you're both probably thinking, okay, the other person didn't say anything, so it must be good to go. And you kind of just roll into a rapid without using your own judgment. And when I'm out there on the river by myself, it's very clear to me like I'm making this own decision myself. No one else is influencing my decision. So I'm going to stop and scout this. I'm going to portage this. And even if you're with other people and they get out of their boat and have a rope set up, what are they going to be able to do? A lot of times people, hey, I'm here, I got you on safety. They haven't thought about if they throw the rope and you grab it, are they going to get pulled into the water in a weird way? Is their rope long enough to reach you wherever you get stuck in the river? So many variables that just are unaccounted for. Uh, Yet people find find that find a comfort in having someone else out there. Um, So, yeah, that
Yeah,
false sense of security can be a dangerous thing, and that group mentality can be a really dangerous thing. It can also be helpful. I mean, I've had my ass saved by other people in the river. I've, had a number of people grab onto a rope that I throw or grab onto the back of my boat, and it could have ended a lot worse if we weren't there together. So there's a time for both, but I think respecting that that group mentality hazard is real important.
yeah, yeah. No, those are all valid points, and I guess well, for one, I appreciate you just coming out and sharing that because I like my own opinion on this kind of controversial subject is like, hey, it's real. You're doing it, whatever. Like, might as well talk about it. Might as well, just put it out there and say like, hey, this is what's going on with me. Like, this is what I'm thinking. So I think it's cool that you're willing to share that, and we can kind of break through whether people think it's a good idea or bad idea. Or, I mean, for the record, I think it's a bad idea. I think helmets and life jackets are like a pretty no-brainer safety thing that you should just utilize. But I also hear what you're saying, and when you make that comparison to solo kayaking, which is also tends to be a controversial subject. Like when I first took a safety class, when I first started kayaking, that was like the very first thing they said. You always go with at least 2 people, but really you want a minimum of 3 people, right? Which I think people constantly break that 3-person rule just out of like, I mean, it's hard to always put together a crew to go kayaking, right? But I agree with you on the solo kayaking. Like, I think people tend to miss the nuance that's involved in solo kayaking, that they jump straight to the kind of cases of like, well, what happened if you were pinned and someone needed you there? Well, I mean, right, like you said, right? Like, there are cases where having someone there could be critical. But there are a lot of other factors, like you said, the group mentality. I know whenever I've soloed something, I'm usually soloing at like a level below where I'm comfortable with, and I'm taking the easier lines, like Gore Canyon, for instance, right? Like I've soloed that. I'll solo it again, but I'm taking the easier lines when I do it. I'm like trying to eliminate the other risks, and so probably I'm more likely to get in trouble when I'm in a group and I'm like, oh, I got a bunch of people here in case something goes wrong. Or I mean, I guess the other piece there is boaters get in the way sometimes. Like I had, I was in a big group, toilet bowl on Gore. We were paddling down, and there were two people that swam in toilet bowl. And I'm always like looking to make sure people clear, but there were so many people, I couldn't really tell. And I saw some people standing like, I saw some people below me. No one was flagging me down or anything. I paddle in, and there's a boat bouncing around in the hole. And if I'd like caught the wrong bounce, that could have been me in the hole swimming. So,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I,
Swimming, or I've had a few friends who have broken their jaws or gotten KO'd.
mm-hmm.
Boat hitting them. Either they're in the front and get stuck in a hole or wave and surfing, someone from behind smashes into them, or the other person behind, and the person getting surfed rocks them in the face. Yeah, that's a scary one, man. Uh, yeah.
Yeah,
So
there's a lot of nuance there, and there's boaters can definitely be a hazard on the river as well as just the river hazards. But
yeah,
yeah,
but
it's
I mean,
all.
if we wanted to play it safe, I mean, it's still gonna have its hazards, but we could just sit inside and watch Netflix all day. Doesn't sound very fun to me. So there's other sports that are maybe safer. We could I don't know, play some soccer or something, and why do we kayak? Because well, it's fun physically, but it also is fun mentally. Um, yeah, we pick different kayaks instead of always staying in a creek boat, which typically is the safer boat to be in. People are out
hmm
here on the little white truss and slicey boats
hmm
and more hazardous kayaks. It's because it's fun and puts you in a
Yeah,
different mental
or
state.
taking a longboat trying to race it. That's taking a lot more risk on, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Each
that's
their own.
heavy. I have to say, like when I first came into this subject, I was thinking of. Well, actually, I was thinking of like I know your brother spent some time in Yosemite. I saw, when I was researching, I saw some video of him and like did a bunch of soloing around there. And I also think that seems like I do a little bit of climbing. I don't consider myself much of a climber, but like that scares the hell out of me not having a rope on me. Um, but I also kind of understand like you eliminate like it changes it significantly. Like you're not spending all this time belaying, setting up anchors, doing all this rope work. Like you're just in this flow state climbing, right? There's nothing else to do but climb. And I don't know. Alex Honnold makes a movie out of it, and everyone's like he's the hero to everybody, right? Even though he's doing this thing that's taking on totally unnecessary danger, right? He could rope it up and do the same climb. But my immediate thought was like, well, a helmet, I don't know, like you just put it on your head and like you do the same run, doesn't really change much. But I hear you saying that for you, it changes your mental state when you're on the river.
Yeah, it definitely does. And yeah, I can't speak for my brother and all the reasons why he would do the free soloing. Um, but probably had some overlap to what I feel when I'm doing my uh, solo kayaking. One story he did tell me from that summer he was living in Yosemite was partnering up with someone to do some climbing, and they were belaying him, and they didn't take enough slack. He slipped off, and he decked out from like 30 feet up.
Phew,
Um,
damn.
and after that, he started doing a lot more climbing by himself. But I think
Hmm.
similar to my kayaking, it's not just a safety aspect. It was also probably a mental thing where it just
Mm-hmm.
takes you to a different place.
Different place, yeah.
Yeah, he got after it that summer that he was living there, man. There's a waterfall that 99% sure no one's run it before or since he got the descent of it, and it doesn't even have a
Yeah.
proper name that I know of. He named it Jam Cracked Falls. It's a 30-foot yeah, it's probably 30 feet tall, and it sits just above Lower Yosemite Falls. Lower Yosemite is 100 plus, 200 plus. I don't know the exact height on it, but crazy big waterfall. It just goes cascading down, and just upstream of it, kind of hidden from the terrain, is this 30-foot waterfall. And uh, he's got this epic story. It's illegal to paddle in the park. Can't kayak in the park.
Right.
So, middle of the night, he grabs his headlamp and his kayak. He didn't have a car out there. He just had a bike. So he's biking all over for his climbing that he was doing. And yeah, he has his bike on his shoulder, or his boat on his shoulder, and he bikes all the way towards the base of Yosemite Falls, gets a rope, clips it onto his self, ties it around his waist. Maybe he had a harness on, but clips him to him, the other end of the rope to the kayak, and he starts climbing up this rock wall. It's 3 pitches, 5 pitches. I'm not sure the exact number, but multi-pitch
Whoa.
route. And for him, is easy climbing. Other people typically do go up in partners and rope up for this. But yeah, he'd get to the top of the one pitch. He'd haul his kayak up to him, get it balanced on some rocks, and then continue up the next pitch. Haul the kayak up, seriously balanced again, haul it up another pitch. And I remember him telling me, like, man, if that kayak would have slipped, it would have just yanked me off. I would have been done. And I was like,
Whoa.
why didn't you just like have the rope in your teeth or something instead of clipped to you? He's like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. I was like, on how it could be improved upon. But yeah, he managed to make it up the number of pitches and get to this area. He always said it was his favorite campsite. It's not a campground, just a little ledge that he loved camping at. And yeah, went on to solo this 30-foot waterfall there in the park. And yeah, if anyone does it, or anyone has done it, I'd love to hear about it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I've never heard of it done. That's an awesome story. I was just watching last night the video he made of it. I'll link it in the notes. It's a pretty awesome video of just like climbing and kayaking
Oh,
off that waterfall. It's pretty rad.
oh, yeah. I see. I didn't even know he had a video of it, but
Yeah,
yeah.
just some clips of it. He didn't show the whole thing of him getting it up there and everything, but he just showed his like summer climbing out there, and then some clips of him going down that waterfall.
Oh yeah, we'll link that in. I got to check it out.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Um, I I almost feel weird talking to you about this because I don't really know you, but I know that your brother passed away in a plane crash. Um, like, well, I don't know, what was it, 5, 6, 7 years ago, something like that. And I'm kind of, obviously you guys are super close, and that must have been, I mean, I've never experienced a loss like that. I can't imagine what it's like. Um, but I'm kind of wondering how that changed your outlook on life.
Yeah, man. Yeah, all the listeners probably got it by this point, if not, if they didn't know already before, because I was talking about him in the past tense. He was this kind of person. Was this? Was that? So yeah,
Mhm.
in 2017 he passed away, um, and it is an interesting time for sure. Like losing your best friend, not easy. A handful of months before that, I was on a paddling trip in India, and group member of ours passed away over there in India. And that was
Mm.
life changing. It was came back from that trip in India, and I was like, man, I don't know if I want to kayak ever again. I don't know if I do kayak, maybe I shouldn't run anything hard. And then someone was like, I want to go as hard as I can in my kayak,
Mm.
do it for Will Hartman. I was like, paddle hard for him. It's just like back and forth in my mind, and just like crazy set of emotions. And then, yeah, uh, about 4 or 5 months later, my brother passes away,
Mm.
and
Wow.
kind of different situations. The first one, great friend, but I was there, so you get that sense of like, what if I did this? Uh, if
Mm.
this would have gone differently, and more responsibility maybe falling on my shoulders for that one. Whereas the second accident, my brother, I wasn't there in the plane. It was like a lot less responsibility,
Hmm.
and also a lot more unknowns. The first one, there's a handful of people there, so we all are able to recount and know a lot of the details on what led to that accident. And with my brother, he was up there with a flight instructor, and both them passed away in the plane
Hmm.
crash. So there's no one to really recount uh, what the cause for the crash was. Could have been, yeah, could have, like just a lot of guessing, but could have
Sure.
been pilot error, could have been mountain wave coming through, bumping the plane, and them hitting their heads, going unconscious. Maybe one of them, had a seizure, heart thing, and was stuck on the yoke, and the other person wasn't able to control it. But my
Hmm.
brother had his private pilot's license and had been flying for years at that point. I had the chance to go up with him for a few times, which was awesome. Some great memories in the plane with him. But yeah, that day that the plane went down there doing some stall and spin maneuvers, which is pretty standard for that point in his flying, getting
Hmm.
checked off and getting his next certification. Um, and they'd gone up and done successful stall and spins. So, yeah, a lot of unknown. So, yeah, it was interesting that those two accidents happened very closely. And uh,
Yeah.
yeah, it definitely affected my life. In some ways, yeah, made it hard for a few years. And some ways, maybe it saved me. Maybe, yeah, changed some of my decisions, or maybe I, yeah, didn't go on a trip following that. It's hard to say where I'd be now without those accidents, but one thing's for sure, I wouldn't be in the same place as I am right now. So whether I'd be in a better place or worse place, it's unknown. But I'm happy with where I'm at now, and both of those guys, Will Hartman and my brother JP, were huge inspirations and continue to inspire me. And yeah, I mean, I didn't like talking about the accident for maybe 5 years after that.
Hmm.
Yeah, people would ask me if I had siblings. I'd say, oh yeah, I got an older sister, and just trying to avoid the topic altogether. And
Yeah.
then
Understandable.
finally, I started opening up and talking to people about it, and it was kind of big weight off my shoulders. It's like, whew, all right, that feels better. That actually feels really good, being able to talk about it. And all of a sudden, people will start sharing their stories, and you can relate to them with losses they've had, or other situations they've found themselves in. So it took me a while to get over it. I guess I shouldn't say I'm over it, but it took me a long time to feel comfortable discussing it and talking about it. And I'm at a point now where I really just see the benefits of it, um, of talking about it. And yeah, it can be random waves. Sometimes I get choked up talking about it. So I didn't know when you asked me, it's like I could start telling the story even before climbing in Gore Canyon and other things. Like, yeah, random things will trigger me, and yeah, get me all choked up. Um, Other times it just brings back great memories and puts a big smile on my face.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you being willing to talk about it and share that. And hopefully the stories that you told already, and maybe what we can link to some of his videos in the show notes and help kind of keep his memory going. Cause I mean, he put out a bunch of media stuff, which is kind of cool, I guess, if you want to look back and kind of remember some of the stuff he did. He seemed like a pretty extraordinary person. So sorry for that loss, but appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, no, it was good having him around, and he'd call me out on my stuff. Having someone you care about, whether it's a sibling or a friend, they call you an asshole or something, it sticks with you. Like, oh man, that hurts. Like, why do you have to say that to me? But
He knows me well. It must be true.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, take everyone around you. Yeah, cherish them. We never know how long it's gonna last.
For sure. Well, I don't want to. I don't want to miss the opportunity here to talk about the Zamora, because this is probably like maybe one of the more epic things that you've done, people have done in general, that probably no one's real, or few people have heard of. So the Zamoras, this river in Ecuador, it was first skied by Galen V and Todd Wells, and it's two of the best boaters in the world. And like they had an epic. Well, I shouldn't say it that way. That makes it sound like things went wrong. But it was like a full on run for them, and he went back and did it. So that's all I know about the story. So fill in the rest.
Yeah, props to those guys, Galen and Todd, for opening that section up. Todd has been to Ecuador a number of times, and yeah, spent a lot of time flying over rivers, poring over maps. Yeah, just scouting stuff out. And from my understanding, they flew over this and looked a little boring to them, from what Galen recalls. It's like, that looks pretty mellow down there. Well, when you're up that high, everything's going to look pretty small. They get in there and they're like, all right, this is some big stuff. And yeah, there's a few portage, one mandatory portage. I mean, I'm sure one day it could get run, but I don't think it'll be run anytime soon. They had decent water levels, call it on the medium high side. Good medium flow, but I think it rained a little bit on them, and that always gets the nerves going, gets the adrenaline flowing, because in South America, Central America, stuff can flood so quickly.
Yeah,
It's gnarly
amazingly.
down there. You get to camp, man, and it's like, let's hike up 50 feet up into the jungle and hang our tents up there. And even then, let's leash our kayaks and stuff to a tree, because in a matter of minutes, these rivers can just skyrocket. And you can, if you're on the river, it's scary as hell. You're like scrambling to get to the shore. But yeah, there's more. They opened it up, and I wanted to scare myself, get into the jungle, go for a little adventure. So I was like, all right, that seems like a good one. An overnighter. I think it's roughly 70K.
Okay.
And yeah, get to the put in about 5 in the morning. Yeah, I took a bus, 3 different buses from around Baeza, which is pretty close to Quito, Ecuador, the capital. Started in Baeza, took 3 buses all day long into the night. Finally arrived at a town about half hour from the put-in. Hanging out in the town, I was thinking to myself, man, it'd be nice to have some more gear for this mission. You know, having a lighter would be nice. Maybe maybe a machete. What else do I want? I want to go to the jungle. Maybe I should grab some stuff. But it's yeah, middle of the night. I don't know if I want to just go to the put in or if I should wait till stores open. I was just jonesing to get on the river. So I'm sitting there at the bus stop with my kayak, and these locals roll up and they have some beers and plastic cups, and they're interested in the kayak, so they sit down next to me, and the beer starts getting poured, cups start getting passed around, and yeah, an hour or two later, yeah, they I fill them in on my plan, and they're like, "That sounds crazy." Like, yeah, they're just like, "You're nuts," but yeah, go for it, man. So we had some smokes while we were sitting there, and it's like, "Well, you think I could have those matches?" And they're like, matches? Half pack of matches? Yeah, you can have these. It's like, sweet, that takes care of the fire. Now I can cook some food or warm myself up if I need to. It's like, machete, they'll just wait. I guess don't end up hiking. Real marginal decision. Looking back on this trip is like, yeah, one of the most marginal links, domino of decisions I've made in my kayak, but it worked out. Yeah, there's definitely some luck to it.
was
Luck's like,
was
what's that?
there any issues with, as I recall, like when they were first trying to do it, there were issues with just getting permission to run it from the indigenous people around there. It
So
sounds
there's
like you.
some tributary, or some, not tributaries. There's some rivers close by where there are local tribes or indigenous people that are very protective of their land, and understandably, because a lot of mining is going on in Ecuador and has been for a long time. Uh, companies or groups, individuals will come in and tear apart these people's livelihood and destroy what's sacred to these people. So it's pretty understandable that some of these tribes don't want people in there, even kayakers. We're not trying to harm anything. So I try and respect that. This Mora doesn't actually have really any issues with that.
Okay.
There is a lot of land on River Right that's um, controlled, owned by the Shuar community. I think I'm saying that right, Shuar. And before the trip, I'd heard some stories, maybe rumors, that back in the day they used to take their enemies' heads, cut them off, and shrink their heads down. So I'm like, this is a crazy try. What's up with these people? And I get dropped off at the put-in, and I along the river, I ended up meeting these people and realizing, like, in the towns close by, there's a lot of like people that are part Shuar, full Shuar, and just super genuine, nice people. Would help you out if you needed to. Would take you into their village and feed you, give you water and stuff. So amazing people, but at the time in my head, I was like, "Oh God, what did I just get myself into?" I didn't really realize that they're all on River Right Bank, like. Yeah, so the boys that gave me those matches, they waved down a truck and taxi truck, and I was able to throw my kayak in the back, and the taxi driver takes me down to the river, and he's telling me the whole drive. He's like, "This is a bad idea. You shouldn't do it." Not because of the Swar people. He's just like, "You're going into the jungle. You're going into a river. Like, there's like boas in there, snakes, other poisonous animals, jaguars." It's like he didn't seem very confident that I was going to make it out to the other side.
Not to
But
mention that it's big water, class 5, right? It's kind of the nature of it.
yeah, real big river. So it's dark when he drops me off, and I go down to the river bank, and I knew there was a tributary right near the put-in, but I thought, with how dark it was and stuff, I thought that he was dropping me off. I thought I was actually on the bank of the Zamora. I was like, okay, it looks like a decent level, maybe even a little low. It's not too high, but there's a good amount of water in here. The light comes up, and I'm like, all right, it's like finally getting light out enough where I can get in my boat. I know this is gonna be a long couple of days. I should get going right away. Um, and yeah, make it 100 yards downstream. The fog starts to clear, and I realize that I'm on the tributary, not even the real river. Like, and it's just ripping, man. It
Oh
is,
my
yeah,
God.
brown. There's trees going down the river. There's
Whoa.
trash going down. I
No
was like,
way.
I'm glad I have my helmet on. I could use some elbow pads. Getting thrown into logs. And yeah, I was like, okay, this is probably a bad idea. This is way too high. But it starts out pretty mellow at the beginning as far as the whitewater goes. There's some wave trains and stuff, but no huge gradient at the beginning. So I was looking over at the side, and I was like, all right, it's like a foot or two below the tree line, so I could hug the bank, if I need to. Yeah, I can hike out. I know there's a road a little ways on the left. So I, continue downstream, and uh, yeah, just try to keep it in mind that I could make it back upstream if I needed to. But eventually, it starts to wall up, and the gorges start to form in front of me. And it's like, all right, this is moment. Do I keep going, or do I stop here? And yeah,
How
just
far do you think you'd gone at that point? Like
at that
distance
point,
wise?
I'd probably gone like when it really started to gorge up in places, maybe like 20K or
Okay.
30K.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I've actually done the river since, and the development is crazy due to a lot of mining. There's new roads and new bridges getting put in, so access and escape routes are even more possible now than they were on that trip. Um, but sorry, getting distracted. Got some roommates and friends that just walked into the house. You guys all good? um, back to the river. Kick those guys outside. Yeah, back to the river. So yeah, 20 or 30K roughly downstream. Gradient picks up and it starts to get walled in, and I just remember chanting to myself throughout the river for hours at a time. Breathe, focus, paddle. Breathe, focus, paddle. Having that little mantra just in my head, I think helped me a lot. And in between saying it, I try and do the first word in that mantra, breathe. So just try and take deep breaths and then focus and paddle hard. If I was putting strokes in, not messing around, paddle where I want to go. And a lot of my focus was identifying eddies where I could stop and scout a rapid, but not getting stuck in an eddy that's cliffed out, uh, or where if I did get out and maybe I could scout, maybe I wouldn't be able to portage the rapid if it wasn't runnable. So there's a number of times where I'm going down the river and I'd see an eddy on the right and I'm like, all right, that looks pretty good. And then as I get closer to it, I'm like, nope, that's not a place I can get out easily. My boat. So I'd like start hauling ass to the river left side and barely make into an eddy and catch my breath. And yeah, be able to scour portage. I think I had 5 portages on that descent.
Oh wow.
Um, and there's a couple rapids where I changed my decision, and instead of trying to eddy out on one side, I scrambled, tried to get to the other side, and didn't make it, and got flushed into
Oh wow.
big rapids, not having scouted it. So real marginal, real lucky that I didn't end up swimming and having to hike through the jungle with no machete for days, and also lucky that like a flush drown didn't occur. So I don't ever plan on going back into that river at those levels. Uh,
Do you
yeah,
know, was it higher, I gather, than when they did the first descent on it? Do you know? What?
yeah. So I before putting on, I'd taken some screenshots on my phone of a video they made because Galen and Todd have a video online from their descent down. So a couple of the key features, key rapids that they have in their video. It's like, all right, this will be good for me to know when I get there. Like I'm this far down the river, and I'm going down looking for these, and they're just nowhere in sight. I think
Oh
some of the
wow.
big holes that they had were waves when I did it. It was a good
Whoa.
like 15 feet higher in places. Um,
Wow.
yeah, it was yeah, a whole nother level, almost a different river. And a couple times I got in positions where it was uh, real hard to portage from where I was at. Uh, like at one point I was on River Right, and I'm like, there's no way I can portage over here. It's kind of cliffed out, and anything's possible. That's what the people always say in India. My friend, anything is possible. So it probably would have been possible to portage, but it looked real marginal. And I thought it was probably better to try and make a ferry over to the other side. So late on day 1, uh, I'm on River Right
Oh
and
shit.
talk to these locals that are there mining. It's not a big, like, ugly mining operation. It's just a couple of the Schwar people. They've got like some pickaxes and 5-gallon buckets, and not very invasive. Pretty cool operation they had going. And I was like, "La agua está subiendo or bajando? The water, is it rising or dropping?" Uh, and yeah, they're like, it's dropping. It's coming down slowly, but it's coming down. So I hung out with them for a few hours, and then I was like, all right, it's time to go. And I was able to make the ferry over to the left side and portage that rapid, continue downstream, set up camp, and yeah, continued to pick my way downstream. The next day was uh, even bigger whitewater, starts to get more stacked. So I had some more portages that next day. There's a crux on the run. It's the rapid I said I don't think will get run anytime soon. And uh, Galen and Todd in their video, they're able to. portage some of the rapid, get in their boats, paddle around this little peninsula, get back out of their boats, portage some more, portage the rest of the rapid. When I was there, that wasn't really an option. It was just too much water going around that peninsula. It was big laterals that would have pushed me back into the middle of the river, into these huge pour overs. So I
Wow.
look up in the jungle, and I was able to find this little cave that went through the hillside. Uh, and I hauled my boat up there with a rope and crawl through this little tunnel, pop out on the other side, was able to lower my boat down the cliff, and yeah, from there continue portaging the rapid. And after that, it had a few class 4 rapids, but the gorge starts to open up and you get more daylight coming in at you, and you just get a feeling of relief. And yeah,
Yeah.
you hearing from them also, they told me, they're like, all right, once you get past the crux, you're home free, it's good to go.
So you kind of knew you'd made it at that point.
Yeah, I knew
But
I'd made it at that point. And yeah, I was out there, not just after I got past the crux, but throughout the run, making ferries. Yeah, making it through some big rapids. I was just hooting and hollering. No one's out there to hear me. Maybe some of the locals were wondering, who the hell is that gringo yelling to himself? But yeah, it was just war tone, just yeah, as loud as I could, top of my lungs, screaming, like hooting, hollering in excitement and letting the energy
wow,
out.
that must have been an intense relief.
Yeah, yeah, it was an awesome trip, man. And then I went back uh, last fall. It would have been, yeah, just about a year ago. Man, time goes so quick. I'm trying to think if it was 2 falls ago or just last fall. I think it was about a year ago. I went back down and was able to grab one of these local boys down there from Marcus, this kid Anthony. They got a sweet crew. They had half dozen of them in this town called Marcus, and they're just pushing it with the gear they got. Boats with multiple cracks in it. They're welding up spray skirts that look like they have more aqua seal than neoprene on them. Paddles with duct tape all over the blades, and they're making do with it. So I was able to bring
Man.
the boat down for him and take Anthony along with me. And we had the lowest water that anyone's tried to do the river at.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it was amazing having that low volume. Well, it's still a full river, but less water than my other trip. And uh, yeah, I just felt like it was a chill run. Still had some
Hmm.
portages in there, but way more enjoyable. I felt like I had more time to relax. There's beautiful tributaries coming in with waterfalls. So I'd be like, Anthony, let's stop here. And we'd go hike up and go swimming in these pools of these waterfalls spilling in. And yeah, just enjoying the wildlife, the birds, and these jungle dogs that we saw. It was, yeah, a lot lower stress trip that second time. And
Yeah, sounds like a totally different vibe.
yeah,
I mean,
so
the first run, deciding to do it solo, was that, I mean, was it intentional, or was it just sort of like, I'm here, I want to do this thing, and I don't have anyone else to go with?
when I was in Baeza, there were a group of kids, some Team Wiener boys, some kids out of Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and uh, I knew they're solid. I knew that they were solid paddlers. I paddled with some of them, so I was like, "All right, if I go south and paddle something, it'd be sweet to bring these guys along. Uh, it'd be fun. Like I love the solo paddling, but paddling with other people, sharing the experience is amazing. It's awesome to be out there with other people. So I asked them if they wanted to come, and they kind of had their own agenda. They wanted to go paddle some first ascents further north, go probe out some other stuff. They had a pretty full car, so we decided not to join forces. Some other people that were there in Baeza heard I was going south, and they're like, "Hey, I want to go. I should go with you." And I was like, I haven't paddled with you. I don't know much about you. That sounds like a pretty big hazard. So I kind of just decided to slip out of town, yeah, and go by
Hmm.
myself. But I did originally, yeah, to answer your question, try and get some people to go along with me, and just different plans that didn't line up.
Wow, man, I can't imagine the headspace to do that. Like, must have felt really lonely in there at night, all by yourself.
Yeah, and I actually did have a Garmin DeLorme GPS with me,
Oh, huh.
so I was trying to send off some messages to people, um, and yeah, I think it was my mom's birthday when I was in there, so I was like, "Happy birthday, I love you."
Really?
Like,
From the middle of there? No
you
way.
tell her that I was, up to my neck and and shit, but yeah, I just
Dude,
decided to send that.
technology
Yeah,
is crazy. You can wish your mom a happy birthday from like the middle of the jungle.
yeah, and then I remember sending Galen a message, a few other people messages, trying to be like, how far along the river am I? Because I didn't have any printout maps. And that's something
Mm,
I've learned from that trip is not relying on the digital. It's really nice. So going forwards on some expeditions, I plan on having some laminated or waterproof maps alongside a digital copy that I can
yeah,
reference.
makes a lot of sense.
Phone had battery, but it was just on the fritz and it wasn't loading. It was turning off randomly. So it was hard to tell how far along the river I was. So I sent out some messages to try and get an answer, and uh, no one responded until after I was off the river. So
Not helpful.
Lauren, but yeah,
So
it didn't
were
come.
you getting worked in holes and stuff on the way down there? I remember seeing like I think Galen in that video getting worked in some pretty big holes.
Yeah, that one he gets worked in. Todd rolls in behind him. I think he yells like, "What the fuck, Galen?" or something. That one was gone. That was like a wave.
It was washed
Uh,
out. Wow.
yeah, on the second descent, I noticed. I was like, "Yep, here it is." I recognized it, but the first time it was gone. Some other big boulders just turned into some of the biggest holes I've seen in my life. I was over in Pakistan. A handful of people I was over there with. There's the Indus River, and probably the Indus River and the Zamora are like the two biggest pieces of whitewater I've ever seen. So yeah, the holes were huge, the
Wow.
ones that formed at that high water lap, but some of the stuff disappeared. I never got worked in a big hole, but I did get smacked over by some laterals and partially pulled out of my boat. I remember one
Oof.
time flip over and started to get kind of pulled out of my boat, and I ended up rolling up and I was sitting on my back band.
Oof.
And yeah, it's like, yeah.
Yeah, I can't come out of this boat right now. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, death grip on the paddle. It's like, do not lose this paddle. Had a breakdown in the back of my boat, but you got to get to shore to pull out that breakdown. It's like,
For
yeah, it could be a
sure.
good time to have a paddle leash on, or something. Uh,
So
yeah.
did you run the Indus when you were in Pakistan?
Um, the guys I was with ran it. I jumped on for like a half day and ran a section of it, but
Okay.
it's just one of those trips. There's some other tributaries and other rivers in the area that I jumped on, but Indus itself, I just wasn't in the right mindset, and I decided, yeah, today's not the day. I guess that week, not the week for me. Yeah, number of variables. Uh, yeah, most of it
Yeah.
was mindset. Shoulder was a little tweaked, but
Yeah.
still paddling the other rivers and having good lines on the other runs. So I think my paddling was on par for that. Like physically, I think I was probably strong enough to get on the Indus, but mentally, I just didn't feel like doing it. So I got to make it back over there and get on
Yeah.
that river.
I guess so. I don't think that's one you want to jump on unless you're feeling 100%, right? Every mental, physical, everything.
Yeah, and
But you
it's
thought
hard.
but you thought it was comparable to the Zamora in terms of the power of the water and the drops and everything?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, there's some huge
Huh.
stuff. And it depends on levels and stuff. That first trip on the Zamora when it was flooded out, I think it was comparable. The second time I went when it was lower, yeah, a lot easier than how the Indus looked.
That makes sense.
Um, yeah, so but yeah, I mean that Pakistan trip, I've had a number of other trips, even local days around here in the gorge where uh, I'm all fired up in the car, headed to the river, and you just get to put in and something doesn't feel right. And I think it's important to go with your gut and not put on if you're not feeling it, or you're on a river and if you have the option to portage something and that's how you're feeling, trust your gut and go with it. I like pushing a little, facing my fears is something I like doing. Just getting on this podcast, it's kind of facing my fears, going public with some stories, because most of my
Yeah,
paddling and a lot of thoughts, I don't like to be out there in the public showing it to people. So it's important to face your fears, but at the same time, trust your gut instinct, because it'll save you.
for sure. I think that's good. That's a good words of wisdom. And the more you paddle, the more you realize that sometimes your gut's telling you something. Maybe your brain can't fully process what's going on, but something in the back of your mind's telling you like this isn't your day.
Yeah.
What you said, you had a trip coming up to Ecuador this year. What do you have going on?
Yeah. After the fire season wraps up, because I'm working as wildland firefighter right now. So it's hard saying when exactly that'll end. Fires are just going off right now. A bunch of lightning came through the west here. But once that wraps up, I'll buy myself a ticket down to Ecuador and maybe do the Zamora again. There's another river further north, um, that I'd like to try and get on. We'll see if conditions are right for that. Uh, yeah, I'll bring my
First E River, or?
would be a first descent, from my understanding. Yeah, starts with Mu and ends with Latos. So people can put that together if they want.
Okay.
Little hint there, but I'm taking notes from that Zamora trip, and if it's pouring rain, if it's flooded out at the put in, not going to put on. But hopefully the weather conditions line up and have a good forecast. Have a machete and other important gear, and can make that happen. So yeah, I love
Oh,
Ecuador, and it's such a nice place to travel. If people haven't gone down there, they should definitely check it out. Transportation's really easy. There's no need for a rental car. Buses and taxis, you can get it done. They're on the U.S. dollar, which is convenient for us coming from the States. Um, Food's cheap. One of my favorite parts about Ecuador is the fruit they have there. Go into a restaurant and the juices you'll get are just something else. And it's like huge cup of juice for $1, something a full meal for $4. So once you have the airfare covered, the cost of living is way cheaper down there than back here in the States. So
for sure. I've been down there a few times, and all those things you say are true. Just such a easy place to get around for kayakers, and cheap, and pretty, like, I don't know, infrastructure is pretty good there now, and it's like, yeah, it's a cool place.
yeah.
Cool, man. Yeah. Anything else we want to talk about? Like, do you want to talk a little bit about how you've made this lifestyle work for you? Like, I've heard you said you're fighting fires in the summer, and I heard you have like a little clothing business you put together, and like what's your non boating life? Have you pieced that together to make all these, cool trips happen?
Yeah, the clothing company. It's how I make all my money. No, not at
Big
all.
bucks.
Not at all. It was a onesie company that my buddy Sam really
Onesie
got
company, nice.
going. Called it So What? Uh, SCW. Little play on words there. Some fleece onesies. He sewed one up, and then he taught me how to use a sewing machine and stitch one up. And then I was like, all right, I can maybe make a little side hustle from this, but mostly just turned into some trades. Get a little bag of weed or 12 pack or something. Some kind of trade. Maybe I sold a couple for $30 or something, but loved giving it away. And I haven't made one in years, but I taught some other people how to sew and how to make the onesies, and then they went on to teach people. So it's still alive. This girl,
Nice.
Riley Wilkerson, of Steamboat, Colorado. She's the last person I've heard of making onesies. So what is still alive?
That's awesome.
Thanks, Hopper, for starting it, and Yeah, I might have to pick one up from Riley one of these days. She said she's got one waiting for me, and yeah, the ones I've made years ago are slowly falling apart. So yeah,
Gotta
still
take
in
care of those
business.
again.
Yeah, still
20
in
years from
business.
now, they're going to be collector's editions. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'll see one every now and then. Someone will pull it out, and I'm like, "Who'd you get that from?" Like, "Oh, so and so made them." Like, all right, like it's cool seeing them pop up here and there at put-ins or at parties. Um, but yeah, most of my work has been wildland firefighting. Been doing that for over a decade. For the last year and a half, I took a little break last summer from firefighting, and I was doing some aerial surveying, flying around in planes, mapping stuff out, mostly with LiDAR equipment. Really cool technology, shooting lasers down at the ground, bounce back up, able to get topography and other information from the data. And they're doing some cool stuff around the world, South America, finding old ruins with LiDAR because they're
Oh,
able to go
wow.
through the canopy, the jungle vegetation and the canopy, and find these old ruins that otherwise wouldn't be visible just with your eyesight flying around. But I've wrapped that gig up and I'm back doing fire now. The firefighting's just seasonal in the winter time. It's usually construction work. When I was younger, I did some restaurant work in the winters. So big lifestyle was just pulling the trigger and moving out here to the Northwest. I think that was one of the biggest steps I had to take to pursue kayaking at the level I wanted to. Um,
Yeah, it's become such a hub for all the best boaters. I mean, if you want to get good, like the water's out there, the creeks are out there, and the talent is out there to learn from, right?
yeah, having other people around you to keep pushing you, and it's cool. This next generation coming in, it's like, yeah, just stepping it up another level. So now I feel old and washed up, and it's like, all right, I'll run shuttle for you guys today. Let you guys take the reins, and they're on point. But I'm sure another 5 or 10 years, they'll be the ones running shuttle, and there'll
That's
be a bunch
right.
of new kids
Yep.
taking over.
The cycle of
Um,
life.
but yeah, I think just for other people that want to, whether it's kayaking or anything in life, it's just chasing your dreams. And yeah, there's a lot of different roads I could have gone down and could have pursued kayaking even more. Sometimes I wish I would have, but there's not a lot of money in the sport. So if you're trying to get rich, probably pick a different career path than professional kayaker. But life's not just about money. And the lessons you learn on the river and hanging around the boating community, priceless. Uh, so just chase your dreams and face your fears. Get after it. If you want to do something, uh, make a plan and go for it. Um, yeah,
Yeah. I don't think there's a lot of wealthy people out there that can say they had an adventure like you did on the Zamora. That's pretty epic. Sounds like you got more coming too. So we'll have to
yeah,
we'll have to hear about the future adventures.
yeah. And then we just have these ideas of what we want when we're young, or yeah, growing up and stuff. Even now, I have ideas of what I want to do in 20 years from now. And by the time you get to that age or to that position where it's possible, a lot of times I realize like, I'm ready for something different. That's not actually
Mm.
what I want anymore. So just keeping the doors open and try not to close opportunities for yourself. Um, yeah, we're as humans, we're able to multitask. That's a pretty cool thing we have in our tool belts. So, whether it's going to school and kayaking or pursuing a job you're really interested in and kayaking, I think it's important to multitask, focus on multiple projects.
Yeah, totally. Having those different threads in life. So if one somehow gets shut down or you become uninterested in it, you have something else to pursue, right?
Yeah.
Cool,
Yeah.
man. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap it up unless you have anything else that you want to say.
No, no, I think that's about it. I guess coming on, I was like, all right, what's something I want to talk about? I was like, I don't know all the questions he's going to ask me, but I pulled out an old poem I'd written down, something people don't might not know about me, but I like to do a little writing on my own, journaling and poetry. So
Oh,
I wrote a
awesome.
little poem a long time ago. Don't know the exact date, but uh, yeah, it's kind of about kayaking, and I thought I'd share it.
That would be
uh,
awesome.
yeah, it's called Fame. A lot of people in this game. It's a beauty, but also a shame, because sometimes there's a fare, and you got to pay if you want to play. It can be like a snare, comes out of nowhere. It can also happen chasing the fame. So don't lose real love for the game. Got to be ready to take the dive. Do what it takes to help a friend survive. Got to be careful who you roll with. It could be more dangerous than the master swordsmith. We shave down the sliver of doubt. It gets smaller but sharper, and when it hits, we know to say no to the stout.